Right. Thank you, Katie. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Christian Kiok. I'm from 2K Business Intelligence Solutions, and I would like to lead you through this short series of webinars that we have prepared for you with regards to web analytics or e-commerce analytics. Just a quick overview of what we're going to talk to you about. So today we will be talking about why should I use BI software for web analytics and what is the advantage of web analytics, how can I optimize my processes using that. Then there'll be the second part, which will be talking about best practice for KPIs in e-commerce. We're going to be introducing an idea on a web controlling framework for user and content controlling, basically how to optimize those, and we'll be talking about some KPIs that are commonly used in e-commerce and what they are used for, what might be a good situation to use them in, and whether they might be suitable for you or not, because obviously different KPIs lend themselves to different situations and different areas in the business. Then finally, in the last installment, so the second one will be in 2 weeks from today. The third one will be just 1 week after that, because we're approaching Easter, and obviously with half term being upon us, we wanted to make sure that as many people as possible can be available for that. So the last part, we will then be talking about the difference between direct and integrated business intelligence. I'm going to touch on that briefly today towards the end, so you know what the difference is, and going to give advantages and disadvantages of both of those systems. And most importantly, and that's also why this last part of the series is slightly longer than the other two parts, we want to show you some examples of software, of an integrated software, namely Board in this case, and some modules of a recency frequency monitoring module, also that's for customer value analysis, then also predictive analytics and customer segmentation. So three aspects that are very relevant obviously in the world of e-commerce, and that's going to be the last part of this series in conclusion. Right, okay, so today we've got about half an hour. We've got 25 minutes left. I want to finish slightly earlier, so if we've got any questions, then obviously you can ask those at the end. Actually, you can ask them at any time, but we're going to be trying to answer those at the end. Okay, so the two questions I raised earlier: why do I need web analytics? So what is it all about? This slide you're going to be seeing a lot. I think it's actually part of all three parts of the webinar series. So what are the questions that I'm asking myself? It's about your shop. What are they looking at, the customers, the visitors? Where are the visitors coming from, and who visits the page? So obviously you need to know where they're coming from, so you can make sure that you can advertise in those areas or try other methods of search engine optimization and so on and so forth that we're going to be talking about, to make sure that you can utilize those channels and make sure that the customers, you know where they're coming from, so you can get more of them. What are they looking at? Obviously very important, which is the content on your website that is viewed the most, and that will lead in turn to sales or other relevant actions, obviously interactions that you need. So that's clearly very important, so you can emphasize that content and build on it. And then obviously, who are these people anyway? How can I segment them? Which are the customers I really want? Which are the customers I maybe don't want? Because obviously those are, there are unfortunately customers that I don't want as well. The idea is to then get transparency on this and to be able to interpret the results to obviously optimize your processes and make your website and your web shop work harder for you and drive revenue and increase profitability. So optimizing your website, there's several aspects of that. Obviously optimizing content is one. Like I said a minute ago, you want to use business intelligence ideally, or you want to use the data that is available to you regarding your web traffic to analyze the usage of the content in your or on your website. Then obviously that can be used to improve the quality of highly frequented content, and not just the quality but obviously also the quantity if possible, and ideally will lead to an optimal provision of content to your users to support customer loyalty, retention, happiness, all those kind of aspects we're also going to be touching on in a minute. So there's this sweet spot there that you can see in this little diagram there. Content should be useful, it should be usable, it should be accessible, and obviously the sweet spot is just where all of those overlap. I suppose that probably goes without saying. Optimizing the usability for your customer, very important. System quality through transparent navigation. The navigation needs to be clear. That will lead to higher user friendliness. I mean, we probably all know the example of Amazon that has mastered that. You know, just a very, very small number of clicks required to basically do the things that you want to do or that they want you to do. So obviously user friendliness is very important, because you don't want to have a situation like this, and some of us might have felt about certain websites like this. I know I have, and obviously that's something that's very, very important to make sure that the usability is good. There's a small diagram here, or a graphic at the bottom. Content is king. You might have heard this being said, content is king, but usability is queen. And as this graphic suggests, they should be in balance as well. So make sure that you're not content heavy, but your usability is low. Obviously content, you can overdo it on the content side, basically. So again, the idea of analytics and web analytics is obviously to get the data, analyze all of this, and then to make it transparent where your strong points are and where your weak points are that you can work on and improve. The next one is optimizing navigation. So one is obviously click rates on links, which links are clicked how often. Then a click and path analysis. So basically when customers or users come to my website, where do they come in? What path do they take through my website, and where do they leave as well? And just the general navigation behavior of visitors, i.e. do they go back? How long do they stay in certain pages? Do they jump off or bounce? Whatever obviously happens with these users is very important to know about these kind of things. What you can do is obviously A/B tests. Basically say, okay, I've got two options and I'm just going to try 50% of my users on one, and the other will just be directed to the other option, and then you can just see what works better, and basically just go from the empirical evidence of what worked for you in that respect. So that's signified by this little person down there, not exactly knowing where to go. So navigation is obviously very important. The example here is from Google Analytics. Google Analytics, by the way, as the name suggests, is a web analytics tool that would fall in the category of direct business intelligence tools. Like I said, I'm going to talk about that briefly at the end to give you an overview what the difference is. And Google Analytics, probably most of us have seen that before. That's obviously a brilliant tool to help you with the data from your website. So in summary, just briefly, I'm not going to read all of this out. You can and we will send the slides out to everyone that's registered here. If you want the slides for someone else, or someone else that you know would like to have them, that's obviously no problem. We're happy to send them out. Also, there will be a recording of this webinar available, so you can rewatch it, or again pass the link on to someone else you think this might be relevant for. So as optimizing content, usability, navigation, we just talked about them, the benefits. At the end there it says some relevant KPIs. That is obviously going to be the main area of focus for our second part of the series, but just to mention a few. For content, obviously the number of page views, the most viewed content, bounce rate, and the time spent on the site are very, very relevant for usability, bounce rate, and time on site. And for navigation, like I said earlier, the one at the bottom there, for example, entry and exit pages. So where do people usually enter my page? Because you'd be surprised that not necessarily do they always navigate through the home page, but obviously if they've looked for certain things in Google, they might enter your site at completely different stages or places, and that's obviously relevant to know. So these kind of KPIs will be relevant in the optimization of a website. Then a very important aspect in e-commerce is obviously online marketing, not just in e-commerce, but especially there as well. So again, business intelligence helps you provide transparency to measure the success and the efficiency and effectiveness of your online marketing tools. So like advertising banners, for example. You can measure traffic acquisition and usage. So how do people get there? When do they click on these banners, and so on and so forth. Search engine optimization is obviously a big one that we're probably all aware of. Analyze the search words that are being used that are relevant or might be relevant for your business or your industry. Analyze links, backlinks, and so on and so forth. All of these things are obviously relevant to be as high up in Google searches or other search engine searches as you can be. The brother, so to speak, of search engine optimization is search engine advertising. We all know that if we type something in Google, then on the right-hand side at the top there will be adverts. That's what people pay for. Again, can be very effective, but it can also be a tremendous waste of money. So while one click may only cost £1 for a good word and just a few p for a not so sought after word, that can actually add up pretty quickly, especially if the people just click on it, but then they don't find whatever they thought they'll be finding on your website, and basically you just paid for the click, but you're not actually getting anything out of it. So that can actually be expensive if it's not measured and managed the right way. So advertise in the search engine, and then, like I said, measure the success there to make sure that you use your money right. Social networks. Social networks is a big one. Obviously one where there's a lot of debate as well on the sensibility and the usefulness and basically the contribution to a profit margin at the end of the day. So it is important to measure your success in social networks. The question is, what does success in social networks actually mean? Again, there are lots of different key performance indicators that one could look at. Typically the one followers and recommendations or likes, as they are on Facebook, for example. That's the typical ones. The question is, how does that actually drive my business? So you may have to look behind just the number of followers and try and find the connection between the number of followers and your sales, for example. There's obviously other online marketing tools, or there's also traditional marketing. There's newsletters, online promotions, and blogs. Newsletters are a key one. There's very, very good tools these days, like HubSpot, for example. And I'm not doing any advertising for anyone, but that's one that's quite a big one. You might have heard of that one, where you can actually find out who actually opened my newsletter, where did they click, and so on and so forth. Newsletters in combination with online promotions make even more sense. So you can then see, okay, which online promotions seem to be striking a chord with my customers, or at least with the customers that have actually subscribed to the newsletter. That doesn't necessarily have to be the same. So as you can see, there's lots and lots of different factors that contribute, and it is important to try and get transparency and to try and find the interrelations and interdependencies between all of these factors, which clearly is no simple matter. Blogs is one. Again, like social networks, what does a blog actually do for me? Does it really actually drive my business? It can do, especially coming back to the point that we talked about earlier about content. it can be very relevant, but again, it can also be a tremendous waste of time. So make sure that you find out whether your blog actually drives your business, whether it's good for recommendations, whether it's a good multiplier, or whether really nobody actually really cares. Traditional marketing, in inverted commas, is obviously also something that can be measured and should be measured. I didn't want to leave it out, but it's obviously not online marketing as such. So again, a quick summary on those 5 areas that I just talked to you about. The benefits here listed out, obviously, talking about the last 2 points, social networks. What are the benefits of that? Like I said, it's sometimes a bit questionable, but the good thing you can get user sentiment out of it if you do it right, and try and find something out about user opinions. Word of mouth analysis, what are people saying about me, that can help you improve your service, improve your products, improve your processes, and so on and so forth. So that's more difficult to capture in a KPI as such, but that is certainly something that great value can be derived from if it's done properly. Like I said, no simple matter. And other online marketing tools, obviously regular information and contact. It's always good to drip feed your customers, especially in the B2C field, I think, in B2B probably as well, depending on what it is that you're selling. But regular information and contact is always good, and that's what a newsletter can be used for quite well. Again, difficult to measure, especially the direct impact on your bottom line, but like I said, it's very, very complicated, lots of interdependencies, but certainly something to keep an eye on. And the click-to-open rate is what I said earlier, how many people actually open my newsletters and so on and so forth. Done well, visitor and customer retention can be driven through those, like a blog, for example, as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. So eCRM, customer relationship management, obviously one point is improving your customer relationship. That's something I touched on earlier. Customer requests and complaints can be done obviously in social media, but not necessarily just there. Sometimes you just get direct complaints. You might have a call center. Make sure you keep ahead of these things so you can find out whether there may be a trend or a cluster of complaints in certain areas, or indeed a cluster of requests for maybe a new product or a new service, which can be quite profitable, or an advantage, competitive advantage, if you're the first one to act on that. So obviously the goal being there to have happy customers. The customer orientation focus can obviously be set by selecting the correct KPIs. That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit in 2 weeks' time. Clearly, you shouldn't have hundreds and hundreds of KPIs because nobody can actually keep an eye on them. So you have to have a selection of KPIs. And by selecting a certain number of KPIs, you naturally put a focus on those areas. So to your workforce, you will communicate what are the important aspects. So if you focus a lot of your KPIs on customer retention, then your people naturally, because they'll be monitored and they'll have to report accordingly, naturally will focus more on retention. If you focus on customer happiness or customer acquisition or whatever it is, you need to make sure that you use your KPIs wisely, because especially if then payment is linked to performance and certain KPIs, that's the behavior you will get. So it's important to think about that beforehand and choose the KPIs wisely. Customer acquisition, obviously very important. So generating customer leads online is something that's obviously crucial. Analyze purchase intentions and first or repeat purchases. You've all have seen this, I'm sure, at Amazon. Customers that bought this product also bought the following 10 products. And more often than not, I find it actually works pretty well for me, and those products do really actually interest me. So that's obviously something that can drive revenue quite well, but also obviously keep customers happy. Facebook does a similar thing with the adverts. the adverts tend to be pretty much spot on. Yeah, that's something that's obviously very, very important. Also, you should determine the cost of a customer. That's obviously something that you can't just derive from web data. That's where you will need the interaction of different data sources. But it's quite important to know the acquisition cost of a customer, because if they don't yield you a profit margin that's higher than that, then you should probably not acquire that kind of customer. Surprisingly, many organizations don't know the cost of their customers. In fact, a lot of them don't actually know the profit margin per customer. In fact, these two are obviously crucial to know how you're doing, and because revenue in itself and new customers in themselves are not necessarily always just positive, as strange as that may sound to some people. Okay, customer retention, obviously customer loyalty is important. It's always better to resell to an existing customer than to find a new one. Clearly the costs of that transaction are a lot lower than acquiring a new customer. Up and cross-selling, that's something I talked about earlier. Customers that bought this football also bought this football shirt, and upselling, obviously trying to increase the amount, volume, or quality of products that you've already sold or services. Then finally, customer segmentation. That's something, like I said, we're going to be showing also in the last part, where we're going to be talking about data segmentation and how to segment, how that can be supported by a business intelligence software. Clearly, it's important to find out what kind of customers are similar and what kind of groups are the most relevant for you, maybe in terms of profit margin or in terms of support times that obviously cost money and so on and so forth, and try and find aspects and criteria of these customer groups that make them unique, or that make them that differentiate themselves from other groups, and then maybe you can act on those, or you can decide which groups you're not going to follow up on, and so on and so forth. So in identifying important users, valuable customers, and unwanted customers. Valuable customers, clearly those are the ones with a higher profit margin. Unwanted customers are the ones that probably cost you more than you're actually getting from them. I've got a few right now, trying to get rid of them. That's a crucial one as well. Important users, what's the difference between an important user and a valuable customer? An important user may be someone that's a great recommender or a multiplier. So if you sell fashion and Madonna wears your top at the whatever celebration or ceremony or award, whatever it is, you probably gave that to her for free. So the profit margin on Madonna is probably not very high, but if then 50,000 teenagers run to the shop and buy your products or buy them online, then obviously clearly that is one important user. And Madonna is just one example, but obviously there are people that influence other people online as well. So you want to make sure you identify those. Okay, summary again. I'm not going to go into much detail because time is running away, and I want to talk to you just briefly about the why should I have a BI software for that. So why does BI software make sense? Lots of people that don't use business intelligence software, be that direct, like for example Google Analytics, or be it integrated, like a tool, for example, like Board, they get data from their website, from other systems. That's why I put Microsoft there. That might be your ERP system. That might be another system like your finance bookkeeping system, your sales software, whatever it is, CRM software, lots and lots of data. Typically, if they're not integrated or if they don't have a direct BI dashboard capability or analysis capability, people will get data out into Excel or in PowerPoints or whatever, but usually try and work with this data somehow, manipulate it, and basically try and use it that way. That leads to several disadvantages that can be summed up as an Excel chaos or Excel hell, as some people say. It is file-based, so only one person will usually work on it at one time. Inconsistent data, because once you've taken it out of the system, the source system, obviously, it will stay at that level of up-to-dateness, basically. If you took the data out yesterday and something happened today, well, you're not going to have it in your Excel sheet, obviously. The data model is limited, it's two-dimensional. You've got different decentral formulas at the spreadsheet level. Manual data consolidation, that is obviously very, very error-prone, very manual, long-winded. And we've seen quite a few examples of massive Excel tables with lots and lots of formulas. Nobody really understood anymore because it's basically grown over time. And there's one, for example, a company, online retailer, they lost a couple of million each time with every forecast because they just couldn't find them anymore. The formulas were so complicated. So basically they said, well, we're just going to have to live with this, really. That's obviously not a great situation to be in. The data is non-verifiable because you don't know where you took it out, so you might have had the situation, or you may be aware of it. I've certainly seen it quite a few times that people come to a meeting with 2 Excel sheets that should theoretically be saying the same thing, but they don't. So you spend the first 15 minutes talking about who's actually got the correct data. Well, I downloaded mine yesterday just before lunch. Well, I did it then. Oh, maybe that's why, and so on and so forth. So you never know who's actually got the truth in their Excel sheets. So what's the solution to that? Either direct or integrated BI. So integrated would be the one where you get the different data sources, and we're going to see a different slide on that in a minute. Or integrated in one single data source that is represented by this cube in the middle. The process to do that is called ETL, extract, transform, and load. And then obviously on top of this one integrated data source, you will then have your reports and your forecasting and planning sheets and so on and so forth. The alternative is the direct route, where basically you have your analyses and your dashboards directly in that tool, like for example Google Analytics, where you will just use the data straight away. You don't need to do anything with it. You don't need to integrate it in a different system. You can just look at those reports straight away. So that's the idea of business intelligence, and obviously the advantages of that in terms of automation, less errors. In fact, obviously there aren't any errors in the mail because it's automated. Especially the fact that you've got this single point of truth where you know data derived from that is actually true, and there's no question about who's got the correct data, because your data is always live, it's always current, and it's always correct. So, and that's my last slide. I know it's now 11:30, but we did start a couple of minutes late, so just bear with me. I'm just going to finish this one off. So the website, on the left-hand side, you will see sort of the more direct route of business intelligence, and on the right-hand side, the more integrated one. So your website obviously generates data. We talked about the data for your users and your visitors and so on and so forth. But clearly, you've got other data sources in your business as well. You've got your eShop system that will be fed from data from your website, but you've got an ERP system where you may have your bookkeeping information or warehousing information, whatever. You've got a CRM system with all your customer information, and so on and so forth. There are various others as well. So the web analytics system, the direct one, will just take the data from the web and basically do something with it. The integrated one will say, okay, I want to integrate, as the name suggests, data from different sources in one single data source, a data warehouse, if you like. And that will usually then be enriched in this multidimensional OLAP cube. OLAP stands for Online Analytical Processing. Basically, it's just it lends itself to higher performance. So basically, your queries and your analyses can be a lot quicker than in a relational database, like in a data warehouse, for example, without getting too technical here. On top of that, you then have your reports and analyses. In your direct web analytics system, you will have those as part of the tool, but, and that's the drawback, it's obviously only from that part. So Google Analytics, for example, will only give you information about your website. It will not combine this with sales information. It will not tell you anything about the value of a customer. It will only tell you about how many visitors, where were they from, when did they come, what did they look at, and so on and so forth. So this is obviously more like a data silo in a way. It is direct, but it doesn't incorporate data from other sources. the tools that are integrated, some of them at least, can then also do support planning and forecasting processes. So basically you can look at the future, not just look back and look at what happened today or yesterday or a minute ago. You can also look what's going to happen also with predictive analytics. That's something we're going to be talking about. And I will show you briefly at the third part of this webinar series. And then finally, obviously, you have a management cockpit which integrates different sources or just the one, depending on which kind of tool you're using. But typically then there are dashboards with KPIs and fancy diagrams and gauges and dials and what have you, if you like that kind of stuff. Okay, so that is that. Next step, like I said, next week we want to be talking about some KPIs and best practices for those in terms of e-commerce, and then on the 26th I want to show you some software and talk a bit more about the advantages and disadvantages of direct and integrated BI systems. Right, that took a couple of minutes longer than I wanted it to, so if there are any questions, maybe Katie, did we get a question? Maybe we'll take one.
We've had a question from Robin saying, do I have to throw away my old Excel sheets if I implement a BI system?
Right, yeah, that is a very good question, because obviously those Excel sheets, they have grown over time and they do usually capture your business quite well and your business processes. So it would be a shame to throw those away, and especially if you build them yourself, because you poured a lot of your heart and soul into those, some of those anyway. The answer is no. You don't. Obviously, these will usually be the basis for a business intelligence system. So the logic and the cleverness that's available and present in those Excel sheets, that will be used to implement the system. Good systems, good BI systems have an an integration with Excel. So you can actually partially at least use the Excel front end as well. So no, that will all be used and it will be put to good use. It'll just, basically the idea is to get rid of the drawbacks of Excel, but to support that with more automation and efficiency and less errors. But you don't have to throw those away, no. They are in fact very important for any implementation project. I hope that answered your question. Okay, looking at the time, I think we'll leave it at that for now. I'll be happy to welcome you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for your attention and have a good day.